This is Demira Virgil, and I am your host for Queendom Conversations podcast. I am so happy to have an amazing guest today. Her name is Amy Stark Faust. She has an amazing testimony about being resilient. She's going to speak to us about her journey, and she is the definition of what excellence looks like. I'm going to let her introduce herself. So go ahead, Amy.
Thank you for that introduction. I appreciate it, and thank you for letting me come speak to your audience today. I guess my journey probably began after going through a divorce after being married for 29 years. And if most of you in the audience know what that's like, being married for a really long time, your identity, your life, your everything is tied up in raising your kids and being married to someone. So to begin again as you're turning 50, and that's already its own separate issue in and of itself, is something that was pretty difficult. It was pretty difficult. I had not lived on my own since I was 19 years old. I was 19 when I got married. Wow. And so it created a lot of different challenges, a lot of things to overcome. I'm 4 years divorced. And I will say that even though I thought it was probably the worst thing that had ever happened to me at the time, it's been a huge blessing. And I've been able to find myself. I've been able to learn a lot more about myself, fall in love with myself, date myself, and then create healthy relationships after that.
So let me ask you this. So as you're talking, then I'm just kind of taking notes because I don't want to miss anything. So you got married at the age of 19. And so you were used to having a husband. You were used to having a family. And so you didn't really have a life outside of that. Right? Because everything, it was just basically family. So what is advice you would give to young mothers or women who are engaged or they have talked about they've talked to their significant others about, getting married in the future? What is some advice you would give women that even though they are getting married or that they may be married, what are some things you would do different?
The one thing that I do counsel people on, and I also speak to a younger group, is whenever you're getting married and even starting your family, if there's something that you enjoy doing, continue to do that. If it's knitting, if it's kayaking, if it's whatever it is, if you take a trip every year with the girls, whatever that is, continue to do that. That's a mistake that a lot of people make. And then you don't want to wake up when you're 50 years old and think to yourself, I don't even know what I like. I don't even know what I want to do, because you have gone all in, which I wouldn't trade for anything in the world, but you have developed relationships with your kids and relationships with your kids' friends, parents, and that sort of thing. But if you are not keeping that one thing that you enjoy doing for yourself, with yourself, or by yourself, you lose sight of that.
So let's talk about this for a minute. What are some emotions like after the divorce was final, and so it's like, okay, this is me starting over. What type of emotions did you have? Like, what type of emotions and thoughts did you have to work through?
Well, at first I was hurt. I was heartbroken. I cried a lot. I slipped into a little bit of a depression. And then I was angry. I was very, very angry, resentful, probably hateful. And I tried my best not to let that spill over into my job or spill over into my other personal relationships with friends or whatever. But, I used to listen to a sermon. A preacher one time said, hurt people, which is exactly right. When you're hurting, you have a tendency to portray that out, unfortunately. So I was very hurt, very angry. And it was in the midst of the pandemic, which was really, the perfect storm, because I was alone. I was in an apartment, and it allowed me to think. It allowed me to pray. It allowed me to meditate. It allowed me to go and walk and just clear my head, do a number of different things that, okay, let's process this a little bit. Why are we here? Not just the obvious reasons, but why are we here? You have to start looking at yourself on the inside too.
Okay, so you said that you have children,
I do.
correct? So for women out there who are going through this right now, and they're processing their emotions, when children are involved, what is the best way? What are some ways you would tell women to be able to have that conversation with them?
It probably varies whether or not your kids are young. My children were adults when this happened. So being able to speak with them frankly is always best, upfront and honest. I don't have as much of an advantage because my daughter lives out of the country and she began that whole journey right about the time that all of this transpired. So it's a little different and a little difficult. And unfortunately, right now, my son's not speaking with me. So that's a tough call. It's a tough call. And I think people think, oh, well, when they're adults, it's no big deal. But I think everyone is affected regardless of their age. So that's a tough one.
I want to take this time to thank you for being vulnerable to come on here and tell your story, because I know that it's not easy. And I also want to thank you for being honest, because there are a lot of women who, when there is situations going on with their children, like, they will not talk about it. And I think that that is an amazing topic to talk about, because not all of us have healthy relationships with our children, and we still have to cope with it, right? We have holidays, we have different things going on. One day we will be grandparents. And so it does not just affect the mother, like, it affects everybody. And so I just want to thank you for coming on here, being honest. Can I ask, how long did you sit in the anger and the hatred and the negative feelings? Like, how long did it take you to get through that stage to where you said, you know what, I still have a life, I'm going to live it regardless of these situations. Like, I am worthy to still have an amazing life. So how long did you process that before you decided to move forward?
It was probably a year of that.
Oh, wow.
I waited until our divorce was completely final, and then I jumped all into the dating scene, which was very, very interesting in and of itself. And sometimes that would occupy my mind, where I wasn't thinking about the anger, or I wasn't left alone with my thoughts, or that sort of thing, because I was still kind of in in an unhealthy state. And it would cause you to, you go on a date and maybe you compare them to your spouse that you were married to for so long, or maybe you you pick apart different things, and you're hurting, but yet you're trying to have this normal life, and it's very difficult. So it was probably a good year that I actually did that. And then I started dating and coming out of my shell a little more, because I was really, as someone said, you weren't in a shell. I said, well, I really was. When it came to talking about my kids at a banquet or something like that with sports or whatever, I could do that all day long. But talking about myself and my feelings, that's just something I didn't do. It's something I didn't share. And I have found in this process that being vulnerable and being authentic, we're not perfect. We're human beings. We make mistakes. I made mistakes in the dating world. And so just owning that and realizing that God gives us a little bit of grace, so we need to give it to ourselves.
So let me ask you this. So you said that when you were going through these different emotions, you were going to church, correct?
I was.
Okay. So there are ladies on here who may not have a relationship with God. They may not pray. They may not go to church. So can you just talk about some of the benefits, or how do you think that you going to church and you praying and you just leaning into God more, how do you think that helped you? Because there are some women who don't know how to pray. There are some women who will not go to church. There are some women who are trying to process these emotions on their own, not realizing that sometimes, well, really all the time, you have to give it to God. Like, you have to let things go, and that you have to give it to God and know that at the end of the day, He is going to take care of all things. You don't always have to have a response. You don't always have to try to justify your actions. You don't always have to try to explain to people, especially when you are grown and when you know that you are worthy of something better. But there are some women who really they do not have a relationship with God, and they don't really they don't understand the difference. And I think that whenever you deal with a woman that has a prayer life and has a relationship with God, that we as women have to understand that sometimes we are the only example of what church looks like. We are the only example of what a relationship with God looks like. And so one more thing, and then we'll kind of open it up so that you can talk about your social platforms and just the things you were working on. If you could go back to your 19-year-old self, because that is when you got married, and if you could say something to yourself, what is something you would tell yourself to be able to get throughout the years? Like, what is the one thing you would say, Amy, this is something that I want you to do?
Love yourself.
Mm.
Love yourself. And, I went through such periods where I say, well, I loved myself, but I didn't love myself. And so I mean all of you, not just I love the way I look in the mirror or whatever, but love who you are. And it kind of started because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I was when I got married at 19. So then I go through life living vicariously through my kids. And then I was faced with divorce, and I didn't know who I was then either. So love yourself, know who you are.
Amen to that. So can you let the ladies know your social platforms and the way that they can support you?
Absolutely. My website is my-resilient-journey.com. And I have coaching sessions that I offer. I do speaking engagements, other podcast interviews. You can also get a copy of the book that I was part of writing this last year. On Facebook and on Instagram, I'm Amy Deanne, AmeyDeanne, and then also Resilient TX because I live here in Texas.
Okay. So again, ladies, I felt that it was very important to bring Amy on here because this is a conversation that a lot of women, they will not have. They won't be open and honest about the things they're going through after divorce or after their kids have left the home. And I think that there are a lot of good things in here that you can take back with you and that you can process and that you can learn from. And this can be a part of healing for you because Amy, she has come a long way, and it's been a short time. I mean, if you think about how long Amy has been married and how much she has done since she has been divorced, like she's turned her whole life around, right? And so if you've been divorced or if you're going through things and you're still sitting in a dark place, she is an example of what you can do. All you have to do is get up and just believe and try. Like, you are worthy. You are so worthy of living an amazing life. So again, I am Demira Virgil, your host for Queendom Conversations podcast. And thank you so much, Amy, for coming and talking to the ladies today. You all be blessed, ladies.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.